introduction. Mark Whitley from M. Kelly House, Scotiabank. Jane Button, Scotiabank. Greg Sauter from Saskatchewan Roughriders. Ron Stiles from SaskTel. And Mohammed Torshisi from the University of Saskatchewan. Competitors, you get a maximum of 20 minutes to present today. Immediately following the presentation, judges will have 5 minutes to ask the presenters questions. I will be keeping time and be presenting time cards throughout the presentation. And then when the judges have their 5 minutes of questioning, I'll give you a 1 minute warning. I will not at 30 seconds, just so the judges know when they're going to be completed. There's no questions, comments, cell phones, or picture taking from the audience. Please ensure that your cell phones are on silent or vibrate. The audience, we ask that you leave immediately after. This allows the judges time to score their cards. Just give me 1 minute and we'll get started. Confirming that your team L. When you're ready.
Your time. Thanks for your time. So we recognize that we're the last team of consultants holding you back from that lunch break you have coming. And so we're going to try and spice it up a little bit and keep you on the edge of your seats. Don't worry, I can see the excitement already coming off you. We're excited too. So let's just jump right into it. My name is Brock, and we're Optimal Solutions. And we're here today to present a strategic recommendation based off the balance of 3 major tensions that you as management of an organization and us as consultants have to deal with on an everyday basis. The first one of those tensions is really management vision, which is essentially what you want to do. What's your goals for your organization, what's the vision you have, and where you see yourself in 5 to 10 years. The next major tension is really the internal capabilities, which is really what you're able to do, and that's really understanding your strengths, but also recognizing your weaknesses and understanding how to capitalize on those and understand the environment. And then the third point is the external realities, which is really just what you need to do, what the marketplace is allowing you to do, what your customers are allowing you to do. And the balance of these 3 major tensions can be really quite difficult, but it's essential to find a sweet spot, and we think that with our optimal solution, we're very confident with this, that you're able to find some symmetry, and that will lead to your organization to a more prosperous future. And so let's just jump right into the problem. The problem that we came up with today is we need to determine a strategic recommendation for Borealis moving for the next 5 years. You're looking to acquire this company. It's been for the auction industry, and we're looking to understand how we can utilize this and where our exit strategy could be in about 5 to 10 years. Some secondary issues that we have with this is historically the company has had some operational inefficiencies. There are some key members leaving within the next 1 to 2 years. You're unable to expand your appraisal sales, which is one area that you're really looking to expand, but you don't want to increase your sales staff and your full-time staff. And so we have to make sure we're addressing that with our recommendation. The next point is that dominated by major players. So Ritchie Brothers is a publicly traded company, has about $800 million in annual sales, and it has about 60% of the customer base. But one thing we recognized is actually it's more focused in the United States as well as Western Canada. And so your organization focusing on Eastern Canada kind of gives you a little bit of a segmentation. And then finally, just the change in consumer behavior. So really there's a lot of increasing auctions such as Kijiji, eBay, anything along those lines, or just private sales through ads. And so we have to make sure we're recognizing this and understanding the external environment that you're currently in. And so now I'm going to pass it off to Brooklyn to go into the optimal solution that we have here today and how we're really going to address these 3 major issues.
So the vision that we have for you today is for you to purchase Borealis Auctions in order to put it in the best financial position and turn around and sell it to Ritchie Brothers. Through this, we suggest that you do some organic growth in order to maximize the value of the firm so that you are able to get the maximum return on investment. Through this, we have a 3-part solution for you today. This is operational efficiencies, so redefining an organization chart once you acquire the company and maybe making an optimization schedule, also increasing your exposure through marketing and also taking advantage of technology, and in addition, expanding your customer base. So really fostering connections in which will enable you to retain more customers and gain more customers, which will increase your net income. Through this, you will be able to realize the following results: an increase in net income by 22%, an increase in market share by 10%, and also an increase in contracts by 32%. Next, Madeline is going to run you through some of the opportunities both within your organization and within your external environment.
So as Brooke mentioned, we're really trying to balance three major tensions: what you want to do, and what you can do, and what you need to do based on your internal and external environment. So let's take a look at your external environment. There's some really exciting opportunities right now. Although Canada is in a recession, this actually presents you with some excellent opportunities to gain high volume, low priced equipment. The customer channels right now, the customer purchasing channels in your industry are changing. More people are going online, they're selling privately. However, we think that you have a very solid customer base, so although this could pose a potential threat, we think that you're in good shape moving into the future. And there is a competitive environment in your industry. However, most of the competitors are actually a lot smaller than you. And however, it's still important that you differentiate Borealis from the other competitors. So the key takeaway is that your external environment presents some really exciting opportunities, and we're really excited for you guys moving forward. Now, looking at your internal capabilities. You as an entrepreneur have a favorable cash position, so you do have the ability to finance a portion of this acquisition with that cash position that you have. The revenues of Borealis are currently decreasing, so this is a bit of a threat to financing. However, we're very confident that we'll be able to get those revenues back up with our recommendation. Borealis also has a very strong client following, so this is a huge competitive advantage. Very loyal client following. And Borealis also has a strong reputation for the full service experience. This is your value proposition. This is how you differentiate yourselves from the competitors. So we think it's really important that you foster that competitive advantage and do not stray from that. So the key takeaway here is that it's important to foster and value proposition. So now that I've taken you through your internal and external environment, Brock's really going to dig into the financials of your company.
So by looking at both things as you as entrepreneurs purchasing, we wanted to make sure we did the due diligence of looking into the numbers and what they really represent for your organization. And so the first thing we want to understand is that you've actually been utilizing debt in the last 2 years, or the organization has in Borealis over the last 2 years to fund its dividend, because that's how they're generally paid, which isn't really that sustainable. And so we want to make sure we're addressing that and making sure we're changing kind of the compensation structure. The next point is that they're operating on a margin of around 5%, and you look at Ritchie, they're operating around 18%, so we want to make sure we're addressing that and how we're going to find more operational efficiencies in your organization. The revenue growth, as we had recently stated, fell by 28.3%. This is simply because the upper management in the organization actually took vacations in the wrong period of time, and that kind of led to this inefficiency. We'll make sure we're addressing that. And just as entrepreneurs as a whole, we calculated around $300,000 in available entrepreneurial capital just based on your short-term investments that you three currently have. And so we want to make sure we're utilizing this to make sure we're not too level with the purchase, but also taking advantage of the current interest rates moving forward. And usually utilizing a strong debt-to-equity ratio. And so now Brooklyn's going to walk you through the critical success factors and ultimately what led to our recommendation today.
So now that we've told you a little bit about our solution for you, I'm going to let you know how we got there. So first, we identified the top 3 factors that would be critical to your success. These are aligning with the value proposition of the company. Once you purchase this company, we want to ensure that you're retaining those valued customers. In addition, we want to ensure that our recommendation increases the firm value, since our goal for you is for you to turn around and sell the company at the highest value possible. Also, we want to increase your customer base, which will just increase your net income and put this firm at a better financial position for you to sell. So next, we looked at a couple alternatives, and we want to ensure that our alternatives are aligned with the critical success factors. So the first alternative that we considered in order to increase the value of the firm was to offer online auction sales. We call this online bids. So there would be a couple things that are wrong with this recommendation. It would not foster the relationships. You're in a business-to-business market right now, and we want to ensure that you're really fostering those relationships and really holding on to those current customers that you have. Also, there'd be a huge capital investment required, and that just wouldn't put you in the best position in order to sell the firm. In addition, you'd need new human capital that you just don't have. This also failed our critical success factors, so adding online actions would just not complement your value proposition of the firm. The next alternative that we looked at was expanding into new regions. So this is increasing the stakes. However, your goal is to maximize your return on investment. So we see this as the best way is selling to Ritchie Brothers in the future. So with expanding into new regions, this would require a huge amount of capital. So you'd have to take on a lot of debt, and you wouldn't be able to pay off this debt before you sell. So this would lower the value of the firm, and it also, Ritchie Brothers actually currently has connections in other regions, so we don't see this as necessary for you to expand into new regions since they already have those connections, and that's the company that you're looking to sell to. So since this does not match our critical success factors, expanding into new regions will not set Borealis auctions up with the strongest firm value to be able to sell in the future. Our ultimate recommendation is Ritchie Rich. This is setting you up to sell. We want to ensure that the firm has the maximum value to ensure that you get the maximum return on investment as possible. This will increase your value of the firm. This will expand your customer base. This will increase internal efficiencies, increase contracts, and ultimately raise your net income. So setting up the firm to sell through organic growth will maximize your investment. So next, Brock is going to run you through a little bit more about what our recommendation ultimately entails.
So just digging into the meat and potatoes, what we just recently brought up, we want to initially bring up 3 major points or 3 major pillars that we're looking at. The first one is just organizational inefficiencies, which is really, it's all currently based underneath the CEO. There's no marketing. Marketing's underneath the office director. It doesn't really make too much sense from an organizational standpoint. So we want to make sure there's more dispersion in the management and the control. And so we're going to bring in a couple other members to really increase that ability. As well, we believe with a utilization schedule that could help your appraisal situation. We actually might be able to have people focusing on Tuesdays and really building their schedules on Tuesdays and Thursdays and kind of using that in a bit more effective way so you don't have to increase your staff for the short term. That'll be a little more effective. We want to increase our exposure in our relations with our customers. And so how we want to do that is actually with our mobile application that we want to build up and we'll go into later on in the presentation. And so also that'll provide us a lot of data mining opportunities and just really allows us to build a stronger relationship with our customers. As Brooklyn had alluded to, our business-to-business markets. We want to make sure we're focusing on that. And then also we just want to expand into their customer bases by focusing on connections that you currently have, such as accountants or lawyer firms or anything along those lines, focusing on bankruptcy, doing auctions for those, and really kind of expanding the customer and the reach that you currently have. And so now that we've actually did this, let's look into the numbers really of how we can actually fund this. So we had a basis of investment of around $500,000, and you're looking for a loan up to $700,000. Well, we actually did a different coverage about 9.7 and interest payments and principal payments of around $3,700 per month over the next 15 years, which is really quite sustainable for your organization just based off your current net income. And so with that, we see a possible selling price, which we forecasted once again over the next 5 years prior after purchasing the company for a possible 224% with the utilization rates that we currently have. And so now we're going to walk you through the implementation and how you really kind of go through with this recommendation that we have for you today.
So now that Brock has told you about how to purchase the company, we're going to show you how to increase the value of the firm once you've purchased it. So we've divided our implementation plan between our 3-part solution, which is organizational efficiencies, increasing your exposure, and also expanding your customer base. So first, operational efficiencies. We want you to reorganize your organizational structure. Obviously, when you purchase the firm, you will have to reorganize this structure. This will ensure efficiency and set clear roles for everyone. So we suggest appointing Greg as COO, Chief Operational Officer, appointing Mr. Smith as CEO, Chief Executive Officer, since he actually is putting in the most capital into the firm investment, and also appointing Mr. Jones as CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, which will also foster the customer relationships. We noted that you said that Adams and Gardner are willing to work a bit longer, so we suggest appointing them as mentors, which will really help oversee and foster the change. In addition, we suggest that you you alluded, you really want to make sure that you're using everything in the best way possible. And right now, increasing the number of appraisals per day, that's what your goal is without hiring new firms. So if you're able to build optimizational schedules and say one person during one week and then another person goes to another region during 1 week, and really making sure that you have the best possible structure for these appraisals, which will allow you to conduct more than one employee. In addition, we suggest that you apply vacation restrictions. Last year, you had mentioned that some of your key employees were taking vacations in some of your peak seasons, which was not allowing you to really capitalize on the peak season of your company. So clearly outlined roles will create a structured organization for you, which will allow you to be successful. Next, Madeline will run you through the next parts of our implementation plan.
So the next part of our implementation plan is really about marketing. So you've mentioned you really wanted to buy space in trade magazines, which we think is a great idea. So we suggest that you buy that space. The next part is you had mentioned that you wanted to use that search engine optimization on your website. So we suggest that you contract an IT firm to implement and manage this, and really use that search engine optimization on your website to better target and serve your customers. And we also suggest that you increase your presence at trade shows. So the reason we suggest this is to really foster face-to-face relationships. This is extremely important in your industry and for your company, as those client relationships, the close client relationships and quality service is really your value proposition. So we're suggesting that you foster those face-to-face connections through trade shows. So the key takeaway is that investing in technology and fostering those relationships will provide value to your existing client base. Now the next part is about expanding your client base. So we're suggesting that you foster law firms, accountants, and banks to really hone in on those estates and bankruptcies. So by estates, we were talking farms, estates with large, expand your client base, and to increase those liquidation contracts that you have. Next is to implement a personalized client request program. So what this is clients would be able to request a certain piece of equipment from you. So they'd be able to contact you and say, I need this special piece of equipment, and then when you get that special piece of equipment, you can contact them and let them know that you have it. And finally, the last part of this implementation plan is to develop a Borealis app. So what this would be, it would provide auction updates, different appraisal bookings, it would advertise equipment, so to, again, really increase that client value and attract new customers. So the key takeaway here is that developing relationships and personalized service will really expand your customer base. So we've come up with a full timeline for you here today, but what I really want to point out is the first 3 items on the timeline. So the first item is to offer to purchase Borealis. The second item is to redefine your org structure and to really increase those organizational efficiencies. And third is to foster those relationships with the law firms and accountants and banks. So our ultimate goal for you as entrepreneurs is to achieve excellence. So now Brock's really going to run you through what excellence looks like.
So with our recommendation, we wanted to make sure we outlined a few key benchmarks that you really determine whether the implementation and the recommendation was successful. And so a few ones we want to look at is revenue growth of 22% by year 3, a return on equity of around 14% just initially before selling the assets and the company later on, and just interest rate coverage about 9.7%. We have to recognize that you are using a little bit of capital and a little bit of debt to focus on, so we want to make sure we're utilizing your current capital position and addressing that. And so with any change in the strategic direction of an organization, there are risks that we have to address, but we believe that we have provided possible mitigations, and we are more than happy to address these later on in the presentation. And so our optimal solution today was really based off the balance of 3 major tensions: the external environment, the sure those align and cooperate with your management vision and the goals for your organization as entrepreneurs. And we believe and know that with a strong implementation and a successful implementation of what we recommended today, you're able to see the yield of the results provided above, and as well lead your organization to a more prosperous future. And so with that being said, I'd like to thank you for your time. Please enjoy your upcoming lunch, and we'll open the floor to any questions.
You think $500,000 is a reasonable price to pay for the business?
That's why we provided a bargaining range of 422 to 545, because it'll give you a bit of a negotiation range to go and be the partner with.
So really, you're focusing the expansion of business, really operational efficiencies, and marketing. And can you help convince me that those two things? I mean, you have kind of the same people. You're bringing new people in as owners who really don't have expertise. You still have your old guard there, but can you further convince me that the marketing, those two things are going to increase business that much without doing anything else more disruptive?
In addition to the two that you stated, we also suggest that you expand your customer base, so really fostering connections with other businesses in your region, such as the banks, accountants, lawyers, to really focus on increasing more business. So moving on to that, with the personalized services that we suggest implementing, that'll really add value to the customers. So we believe that through the operational efficiencies, making sure of that, and then also expanding your exposure, that will be enough to increase the value of your firm.
To follow up on that, we are seeing such a change in the last 10 years of online marketing, eBay, Amazon's expanding into everything. Can the company really afford not to consider, maybe not in year 1, but in your timeline, can it really afford not to consider doing more than just building an app, going to some form of online sales?
The online industry is growing, and more auction companies are going online. However, we felt that your value proposition to your customers is really that personalized relationship, the quality service, and we felt that that would be lost with the online sales as well. If everyone's going online, that you're no longer differentiated.
So you noted clear plans and clear costs associated with your marketing efforts and expansion efforts. How do you plan to finance those costs? 80,000 and 90,000, I think you noted.
So we actually took out the full capitalization that we're looking is around $700,000, taking into consideration the bank loan and the current capital that we'd invest. So purchasing it between $450,000 to $550,000 would leave you a substantial amount of capital to fund that.
If you could change the debt to equity ratio, would you change it in favor of more debt and less equity, or the other way around? And how do you think that will affect your net present value and internal rate of return?
We actually believed that by utilizing what's currently going on in the marketplace, that utilizing what's going on with major players like that, and focusing on their debt to equity ratio and building ourselves towards that would be more effective instead of straying away from that.
Okay, let's say if you increase the amount of debt,
Yeah.
how does that affect your net present value?
From a selling standpoint later on, it could increase your value if you're determining how to do it.
For the purchase of let's say for the $500,000
Yes.
that you need. Right now there's over $300,000 in debt.
Yeah.
Loan. So if you could increase that, would you take $400,000, and how do you think that affects your rate of return and net present value? Do you recommend doing that?
We actually don't. We actually don't. Utilizing a substantial amount of leverage for the initial purchase at around 70%. Moving up beyond that, it could decrease your overall value once you're trying to sell the organization in the future. And so that's kind of where we're really focusing on. Does that answer your question?
with the existing owners needing to rely on them with the shortfall in experience in the current owners, how do you expect to keep them engaged if they seem to be, the current owners seem to be checked out or disengaged?
So the current owners, one of them actually wanted to stay on for 1 year, and then the other one wanted to stay on for the next 3 years. So we thought that keeping them in the organization as mentors would really allow the current employees that buy-in from the change management, and having them there overseeing the change and really involving everybody in the change will allow them to buy into the new owners.
Judges, any more questions?
Where on your, sorry, one more, where on your timeline does going and approaching the bank fall in there? Because I didn't see it on your presentation. You laid out a timeline of the different steps that you're gonna take, and I didn't see approaching the bank and negotiating financing.
So we plan on purchasing that within the next 3 months, but I have to know before that, within the next month and a half, so we can make sure we're having a good relationship with the bank and getting that capital locked in before we go purchase the company and get negotiations with the other organization.
In addition, the first part of the timeline, offer to purchase, we just lumped all of those steps into one.